Hi kids! Welcome back to Art This Week. I've missed you. I'm going to teach you a little bit about inventiveness with paint, with art. There's so many things that you can think about when you think about inventions. Now I know you guys have been studying that, but have you ever thought about how you can apply that to your artwork? Well, what we're going to do is first we're going to talk about how we could make a fun, very inventive painting, and it's going to be out of acrylic paint, but you can do things differently if you would like. So if you don't have acrylic paint at home, well, why don't you think about different ways that maybe you could try making a paint. Like, for example, if you have any old markers that are kind of used up, you can actually take the cap off, let it sit upside down in a cup of water, and it can actually make paint for you. You might not be able to get all this texture, but you never know, you might find something to add to it. Maybe you try adding some, like today we're going to actually add some salt to make a lot of texture. We can try using different materials like plastic spoons to create the paint. So you're going to need any form of paint that you have. You could also use colored pencils, crayons. Again, be creative with this. You're going to need a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be super thick, just thick enough. If it's like copy paper, it probably won't take the heavier paint. Just keep that in mind. You're going to use a Q-tip. You're going to use now I have this thing called a painting knife, but probably a lot of you don't have this at home. You see how it's very flexible? So if you don't have this, well, you could use something like your plastic spoon. So I'm going to show you first of all how this works. If I take some of the paint and I can squeeze this right out of the tube and put it on there like that, do you see how this can just move around here and it has a real nice flow to it? But you might not have that. So I'm going to actually show you how to do it with some plastic spoons. You probably don't want to use your spoons for your dinner just because, yeah, it's good not to mix art materials and food materials in my opinion. So I'm going to just clip that in my little clipboard there. I'm going to start with the ocean, and I'm going to take some of this paint and I'm going to just spread it right onto the back of my spoon like that. And I am just going to move it across the paper. I'm going to start like this. And you can always add more paint if you need, or you could try using the other side of it too to move it around. Because again, I want you to think about paint and art a little bit differently. I mean, you think about it, somebody had to invent this paint, right? This paint hasn't even been around for 100 years. It was first available to purchase in 1954. So that hasn't been very long when you think about it. Artists used to have to make their own paint. Yeah, they would take different minerals from the ground usually, like different type of browns and yellows, and they would have to mix it with what they call their medium. We have it much easier today, don't we? We don't have to go out and actually make the paint. Do you see how pretty that looks when I put the white on there? Now this white is an iridescent, so it actually has this beautiful shimmer to it. And this blue is a real special blue because it actually changes color. When I move this a little bit, it might be a little hard to see on the screen, but it actually goes from more of a turquoise blue to a deeper blue. So I think that's really cool. And again, someone had to invent these paints. You know, artists aren't always just creating with the materials themselves. Sometimes they are making the materials. Now here's another thing you can do. You can put some paint inside of the spoon like this. And then you can take the other spoon and you can just lift it out and you can spread the paint that way as well. That gives you a little bit more control. Again, I want you guys to find something to experiment with. Maybe you try something you find outside. Maybe you try something like a rock. Maybe you try a leaf. Maybe you try a twig. You can experiment because really there's no limit to how you do this. Now I'm going to take, this is a Venice yellow color, but again, any sandy color will work. I'm going to use my other spoon here. So I'm just going to put it on the back like that. And I'm going to first just kind of dot the paint, spread it around this way just to get it spread around. This is going to be for my sandy beach. And once I have that about how I like it, then I'm going to just take my spoon. You can practice different ways. You can see how I can make just these rotating motions. That's pretty cool. See, you don't even need a brush to paint. You can invent your own brush. And that's really what we're interested in doing today. It's just something totally new, something you've never thought about before with art. I'm going to finish this part up, I'm going to add a little bit more white through here just to make it look more like those waves. My white's kind of running out, so I have to hit it at the back of my hand. Maybe some of you one day will invent a tool that pushes the paint all the way down to the bottom of the tube. Would that be cool? So many things you can do. I mean, think about it. Someone had to invent this paint. Someone had to invent a pencil sharpener, pencils, markers, this palette knife. I mean, all this stuff. Someone had to come up with that idea. It wasn't just there, right? So maybe you do something with art in the future, or again, right now, where you're just figuring out fun ways to be inventive with your art. Okay, now I want to try taking this copper color right here. We've got copper in the back, so that's kind of fun. It's the same color. And I'm going to take my Q-tip, and I'm going to just put my Q-tip here at the tip like this, and I'm going to make little footprints. So the way I do that, you can start with a circle, and then maybe another circle, and then you can just join them together. So you have the bigger circle on this side, and then you're just going to do your little toes. See how it's actually easier using this Q-tip than it might be with a brush? So sometimes you invent things to make your parts of your art easier for you. It doesn't always have to be the way you typically think about it. And the more you can think with that terms of inventiveness, the more you can think about creating things instead of just using always what you have, the better your art is going to be. I'm going to do one more footprint right over here, and I'm going to do one more thing to finish this up. Now remember, if you don't have all these materials at home, that might be actually a good thing, because then you get to invent your materials, right? You could look through the cupboards. You could see, again, if you have any markers that you could turn into paint. You could see if you could find maybe even some food coloring. You could try taking some paper and cutting it up and putting it in strips there. And you could still, even if you don't have paint at home, you could put some glue down, maybe some white Elmer's glue, and then on your beach. Now this first one I did on the waves. Just wanted to show you something different. So this one, I put all of that salt over here. I just wanted to make it look almost foamy. You know how sometimes you get those bubbles in the water? This time I want to try it on the sand itself. All right, so this is just my salt from my home. It's nothing fancy. And again, try this if you don't have the paint. Maybe try it with some glue. That would be really awesome. And then I'm going to take my spoon and I'm just going to move that salt over on the sand. Oh, you can hear that texture. It's pretty cool, huh? Now don't worry if you tried something and it didn't work. That's actually a great step. Sometimes we have to figure out what doesn't work to find out what does. So don't feel bad if you tried something. Guess what? You know what they said about the light bulb? It took 10,000 tries to get it right. So don't feel bad. Just keep trying with your art. And please send me any pictures, any questions. I would love to hear from you. And I'll see you next week. Bye.